Hi folks, and welcome back to Broadside Gaming with me, Zug. So, one of our delightful viewers asked me if I could come up with something with Chorus or Spiritual Fortitude, and I have. And in doing so, I also think I've come up with something very, very good for the Chargy build as well. As it seems, and I'm going to jump right to the end here. So, Blazing Piety is turning out to be one of the strongest ways you can play in Havoc, because Inoctral Judgment has been nerfed. Martyrdom is just looked down upon by everyone, even though it's actually really goddamn good, but it is difficult to play well. Okay? So don't get that confused because people dump on it. It's very good, but incredibly difficult to play well. So if you're an old school zealot, Martyrdom is going to be quite easy for you to deal with. If you're new, it's a trap. So, Blazing Piety and its ridiculous amount of crit is a very good way to build this. So, let's jump in and we'll look at the setup first. So, of course, we're using the Relic Blade because it's my new favourite weapon. Modifiers on this is going to be Mobility's dump stat because screw mobility. Everything else, damage, finesse, power output, heat management, are all very, very important. Perk-wise, we're going with Carapace Unyielding. This is going to help us deal with Ogryns, Crushers, and Bosses. And also the sword has a very high inbuilt penetration anyway, lol, to deal with flak and unarmoured. And you're going to be wanting to run this mostly powered up, and if you haven't seen that before, extra mouse button for me is to turn it on, and as you can see, the bar starts heating up. And as you use it, the heat's going to be rising. All you really have to do is keep an eye on it and turn it off. If you overheat it, I mean, nothing bad happens, you just can't use it for a while. So, also what you can do is just switch weapons. There you go. That's how to turn it off very quickly. So that's how the Relic Sword kind of works in a very brief, vague way. I mean, if you want to see how it works properly, please go check out the live streams where you can see hours and hours of testing. For the blessings, we're still sticking with Cranial Grounding, which reduces heat buildup by 6% and increases weak spot damage by 4% for 3 seconds on chained weak spot hits, stacking 5 times. This is really good for A, doing more damage to weak spots, and B, reducing the heat down from the Relic Blade, which lets us keep swinging for longer. And Rampage is just, it's a flat 36% damage. In Havoc, you are continuously surrounded by hordes. There's never going to be a lack of targets to deal with. So Rampage has given us the most bang for a buck here. Next up is the ranged weapon. Now, a few of you may be confused with saying, Zug, you beautiful idiot, why are you using the Flamer and not the Bolter? The Flamer is actually incredibly powerful in Damnation and in Havoc. It's ridiculously good. And I've even prepared notes for this. So let's look at the modifiers first. So mobility again is our dump stat because we want damage, ammo, burn, and cloud radius at max. Burn and cloud radius are the most important ones, then damage, then ammo. Next up, we're going for unyielding to help deal with boss damage and deal with Ogryns. And then crit, because we are stacking huge amounts of crit in this build. And for the blessings, we're going with Blaze Away for plus 8% strength for every 10% of magazine spent during continuous fire, stacking 5 times. And we're not using the talent that takes ammo from our reserve, because in Havoc, we do not want to be using all of our ammo very, very quickly. Ammo is scarce, or at least more scarce than it is in other difficulties. So we don't want to be spaffing all of our ammo instantly. So we're going with Penetrating Flame. A direct hit applies 4 stacks of 1% brittleness for 5 seconds, stacking 20 times. Now, I'll go over this. So the Flamer is arguably the most powerful ranged option for the Zealot in Havoc. Its burn damage bypasses every enemy damage reduction, and the flames suppress most ranged enemies, helping us to neutralize the gun lines. While Blaze Away combined with Everlasting Flame is typically the ideal DPS setup for the Zealot, ammo conservation becomes crucial in Havoc. Mag dumping should be reserved for large, holy crap moments. So mag dumping should not be the usual. right? You need to be careful. Penetrating flame is just a better choice because of that. As you can expect, enemies are going to be standing around in a big conga line of death, and they will still be there after you have laid into them with the flamer. So the brittleness debuff, which reaches maximum of 20% after about 2 seconds, lasts for a full 5 after your direct fire stops. So as soon as you stop, you have 5 seconds. And in that 5 seconds, you can close the gap and take advantage of all that lovely, lovely brittleness that is now on the target with your melee weapon. And 5 seconds is a lot longer than you think it is. And it literally stops the moment the cloud stops. You now have 5 seconds. See? See where we're going with this? And allowing you to basically jump in with your melee weapon. This also helps weaken packs of crushers alongside whatever is going to be nibbling around at their heels. But this is going to absolutely melt them. And it's also going to give you a huge amount of bonus penetration with your weapon because they are now debuffed with brittleness, which means you can hack through them. And it's just going to reduce pressure on the entire team, really. If you're concerned about being overwhelmed by them in a critical moment, you can keep your distance and use up the whole magazine if you really want to. So you can fall back and basically hold off a pack with the flamer. So, you know, I think it's a good choice. And if you don't, just go use the bolter. There you go. If you don't like it, use the bolter. I'm not your mum. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not going to put little notes in your lunchbox. Choose what you want. You're an adult. But there you go. Next up, we're looking at the Curios. So first off, we've got a plus 17% toughness Curio with 5% toughness, 12% stamina regeneration, and 20% damage resistance gunners. Now, I keep saying this, and people keep misquoting me on this. We're not taking stamina regeneration to increase our stamina regeneration. We're taking stamina regeneration to speed up the actual regeneration starting. Okay, I don't care how long it takes for it to regen when it starts regenerating. It's the start that we want to speed up. Because you don't have stamina, you cannot block or push back a poxburster. So having a tiny amount of stamina regeneration is a good thing. Though we're not specking on it throughout the entire Curio set. It's just good to have it starting faster. Next up, we've got another toughness Curio with 5% toughness, 15% corruption resist, and 20% damage resist gunners. Now, we're going with corruption resist because there is a hell of a lot of corruption in Havoc. And being able to shrug some of that off is very, very powerful. Now you can see the last Curio is a plus 21% max health Curio, but it has the same perks as the one before it. 5% toughness, 15% corruption resistance, and 20% damage resistance gunners. Yes, there is diminishing returns on all of these damage resistance. It doesn't work out to 60%. It works out more towards 41%. But still, I would rather have that than nothing. Let's take a look at the talents. So, we're going to start over here on the right. We're going with Backstabber for plus 20% damage on melee backstab hits. Into Scourge, melee critical hits apply bleed, causing damage over time. Melee hits on bleeding enemies grant 10% critical strike chance for 3 seconds, stacks 3 times. Basically, we crit, they bleed, we crit more, they bleed more. And the bleed is just a quite nice cherry on top of the damage we're already doing. And it doesn't suffer from diminishing returns too much at all. So the bleed is actually quite a powerful dot you can put on them. But it's not there to be like, oh my god, it's all of our DPS. It's just a nice little thing to add in and gives us more crit. Toughness boost into Enduring Faith, plus 50% toughness damage reduction on critical hits for 4 seconds. Into Second Wind, replenish 15% toughness on a successful dodge. Into Blades of Faith, throw a consecrated knife to deal high damage to a single enemy. Very effective against most enemies, less effective against carapace armored enemies. So, you've probably seen me do this in other videos, but don't waste them on crushers. You're just going to annoy them. And same really on maulers. Everything else, pretty damn effective. Especially since the Hidden Blade, or whatever it's called, I can't my memory. Blades of Faith, there you go. It inherits all of your inbuilt crit. So this weapon actually benefits from all of the crit that you have. So that is delicious. Next up, we've got toughness damage reduction into Dance of Death, minus 75% spread and 50% recoil on 3 seconds on successful dodge. Don't really care about this, but we do want good balance. A successful dodge grants 25% damage reduction for 2.5 seconds. This is a very huge buff to us. I mean, if we had the extra point, I would have liked to have taken Thy Wrath Be Swift, but we don't. Then to a toughness boost, then into melee damage, down into movement speed, and then we're picking up Duelist. Plus 50% weak spot on critical hit damage for 3 seconds on successful dodge. Again, stacking that crit and damage. Until Death, fatal damage instead grants you invulnerability for 5 seconds, occurs every 2 minutes. And into Holy Revenant, when Until Death ends, you regain health based upon the damage you dealt during Until Death, to a maximum of 25% max health. Melee damage dealt heals 3 times the amount. Now we're going through the middle. The Emperor's Bullet gives your melee attacks plus 30% impact strength and 10% attack speed for 5 seconds after emptying your ranged weapon. Again, big scary pack coming. If you have to, empty your mag into them, get that brittleness buff nice and rolling, keep it going, and then get in there with your melee weapon and lay about like you are King Arthur. Have at the knave. There you go. And then into Shield of Contempt. When you or an ally in Coherency take damage, they gain 60% damage reduction for 4 seconds, triggers every 10 seconds. Very powerful group buff. Into Hammer of Faith, plus 30% impact strength. Don't really care about this, but we are going for Beacon of Purity, which is actually really powerful in Havoc because it heals 1.5 corruption from the current wound for you and your allies in Coherency every 1 second. Now, I've said this in the last video, but this does not stack well with a Martyrdom build because you have a billion wounds in Martyrdom. This isn't going to do much for you. If you're running either Blazing Piety or Innoxious Judgment, this is going to really help because you're generally only going to be running with 2 wounds. I mean, I don't know many Zealot players outside of a Martyrdom build that actually run an extra wound. So this is big. Being able to heal a singular wound of corruption over a period of time, of course, is very, very powerful in Havoc. And then coming down here into toughness damage reduction, into Chorus of Spiritual Fortitude. Wield a holy relic that releases pulses of energy every 0.8 seconds, while channeling allies in Coherency have stun immunity and invulnerability. This is just ridiculously overpowered in Havoc. Each pulse replenishes 45% toughness to allies in Coherency. If the ally is at full toughness, they instead gain plus 20% max toughness up to a total of plus 100. Base cooldown is 60 seconds. Then into Banishing Light, each pulse of Chorus of Spiritual Fortitude also staggers and suppresses enemies. Range increases with every pulse. This basically means you shut down the entire fight that is currently going on. This can save your group, or it can push monstrosities off of bridges. And then into Holy Cause, channel 5 pulses, grants plus 30% toughness damage reduction to you and your allies in Coherency, lasts 10 seconds. But if you want to go for more damage, just switch it over to Ecclesiarchal's Call. Channeling 5 pulses grants plus 20% damage to you and your allies in Coherency, lasts 10 seconds. This choice is completely up to you. If you're running lower Havocs or just Damnations, go for the Ecclesiarchal's Call. If you're running something a bit more sketchy, take Holy Cause. But again, as I said, not your mum, not going to tell you what to do. Not going to put little notes in your lunchbox. Pick whichever one you want. Next up, toughness damage reduction into suppression boost. Then we're picking up punishment. Melee attacks that hit at least 3 enemies grant 5% impact strength for 5 seconds, stacks 5 times. At max stacks, gain uninterruptible. We don't care about the first 3 things, but what we do care about is uninterruptible. Because that means we cannot be interrupted, ironically. And we have a big sword that we don't want to get interrupted with while swinging. So it's kind of useful, but I'm not exactly building for it. It's just in the way while we get down to Blazing Piety. Next up, we've got movement speed into Invocation of Death. Plus 200% ability cooldown regeneration for 4 seconds on melee critical hit. Again, this is why we're stacking up so much crit and leaning over here towards the right path. And then into Blazing Piety, plus 15% critical hit chance for 8 seconds when in Fury. Fury is triggered when 25 enemies have died within 25 meters. And last but not least, Fury Rising. Critical hits also count up towards triggering Fury. So all in all, it's quite a tanky support build that does ridiculous amounts of damage. And if support builds are your thing, then I do hope this is going to be something you're interested in. As you know, the chorus is just ridiculously good. I am a sucker for the charge, but as a team support ability, it's ridiculous. Not only does it heal toughness, it locks the entire field down. But there you go, folks. A slightly more supportive build. I do hope you like the build, and if you do, please do like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. It really does help us out. And I shall see you all for the next one. And if you have any suggestions for builds you'd like to see, please do comment them down below, and I will get to them as soon as I can. So, until the next one, take it easy. I'll see you later.